Hi, what's your name?
Dave Abernathy,
How long have you been in the church here in Pittsburgh?
since 1920.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is. I'm the senior member around there.
Uh-huh. How long has your family been part of the church?
Well, go back to the Pitts family. Major Pitts settled this town in 1854 and it named for him in 1857. And the Pitts family had a number of members at the church.
Uh-huh.
And then the Abernathy family came along, and my grandfather, for whom I was named, D.H. Abernathy, he was a representative of the church at meetings all over the United States.
Uh-huh.
And he started a uniform Sunday school system, and he was made president of it throughout the southern states.
That's pretty impressive.
And then he was on the building committee of the church. It was built in 1904.
Do you remember him very well?
No, he died 2 years before I was born.
Okay. Do you remember your grandmother?
Oh, yes.
What was she like?
Well, she was a great lady. She liked to fish.
Uh-huh.
And she went fishing at Ferndale when they had horse and buggy days. And then later, she bought a Model T two-door sedan, and she'd drive it out there fishing with the poles on the side.
So is that where you got your love of fishing?
Well, I don't know about that, but I assume so.
Okay. What was her maiden name?
Mary Lou. Marylou.
Okay. And,
She was a staunch member of the church.
uh-huh.
One time during Christmas, we had ceiling fans down each aisle, and they put a canopy in there over the pews, solid blue, and they had stars all in that solid blue. And that was the only time I can remember putting a canopy in that church.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was probably 15.
So I guess you grew up in that church from when you were a tiny baby.
Yeah, I've been a member a long time.
What's your earliest memories of the church?
Well, I can't go back past where the current church is built, because the sanctuary before that was a white building, single story with a belfry on it, that was built in 1888 and opened in 1889. And before that was a two-story building that the Masonic Lodge and Representative of the Methodist Church built. Neither one had a building, and they built a two-story building, and the lodge occupied the second floor and the church occupied the first floor.
Uh-huh.
And before that, they had a 20 by 20 school building across the street from the church, and the church met in that 20 by 20 building. They had slab seats, dirt floor, and they met in that building about once a month for about a year. And then the Masons came along, and the Methodists, they decided to build a first church.
Uh-huh.
And the first parsonage was where the EMS building is now.
Okay. I guess since your grandfather was a big Sunday school person, that you've been in Sunday school all of your life.
Well, I've been going to Sunday school a long time.
When you were a child or a youth, where did your Sunday school class meet?
In the basement of the church.
Down there where all the air conditioning ductwork is now?
Yes.
It must have been cooler in the summer down there.
Well, we got along all right.
Who were some of the Sunday school teachers that you remember from your early years?
Well, I don't remember all of them. As a matter of fact, I can't think of any of them who were at that time Sunday school teachers. We had several, but I can't call the names of them right now.
Who are some of the pastors that you remember over the years?
Well, Dan Lewis. We had a pastor here, about a 6-footer, weighed about 200 pounds. And we had the bearings go bad in the blower that blew the hot air and cold air in the church. And we had vents in the walkways down there for the air to come out. And the bearings went out on the blower. Well, the blower weighed about 200 pounds. And I had two fellows down there help me get that thing out of the frame. Well, it wouldn't come out, it was hung. So Pastor Boyette came down there, this 200-pound fella, and I told him, I said, Pastor, if you'd go outside and say a prayer, maybe we'd get this thing out. Well, while he was out there, I gave it a good talking to it, it slipped right out. So when Boyd came back in, I told him, I said, well, your prayer was answered, we got it out. And I took it down to Henderson Manufacturing, and they fixed the bearings, and then we put it back in.
You mentioned that you joined the church in 1920.
Yes.
What was it that caused you to join the church at that time? Was there a revival or anything going on?
No, I guess it's because my grandfather and grandmother were staunch church members. D.H. and Mary Lou Abernathy.
Were they the first Methodists in the family, or had your family been Methodist before that?
Well, the Pitts family, who was my Mary Lou Abernathy's father, was W.V. Pitts, and lived out here on the plantation 3 miles south of town. And her uncle was Major W.H. Pitts, for whom the town was named.
How about the Abernathy family? What's their religious heritage?
Well, Reverend B. Abernathy, for whom that west window there was named, was a pastor. And he came here from Jefferson and started preaching here, and he always gave the bride whatever the guy paid him. So one fella he married one time didn't have any money. He says, preacher, I don't have any money, but I'll give you the best ribbon cane syrup you ever ate. And he gave him a gallon of ribbon cane syrup. But Reverend B. Abernathy, that's Buckner Abernathy, was my great-grandfather, and D.H. was my grandfather.
So he was D.H.'s father?
Yes.
Okay.
He came from Arkansas down here. Put in dry goods store over here on Main Street.
What kind of impact has First Methodist Church had on the community here in Pittsburgh?
Well, originally when they built that building over there, the Baptist Church, First Baptist, built a prayer-style church with stained glass windows at the current location where the church is, 200 Jefferson Street, and everybody commented, well, here's a small town with 2 big churches. And of course they had a lot of members, and the Baptist church grew so fast that they borrowed $200,000 to tear the old church down and build the current church that's there now.
Who are some of the important lay leaders in the church? I know your grandfather was an important lay leader. Who are some others throughout the years that you know of?
G.C. Hopkins, he had a dry goods store here across the street. There were 3 or 4 Hopkins members that were members of the church. And then C.F. Swayze was on the building committee with my granddad. And Brother Settles was a pastor, and he had been in Bryan, and he came here and built. He stayed a week with my grandfather, and they took a walk one morning, and my grandfather told him, says, we need to build a new church. This is when they was in the single-story frame building. And about a month later, he began to tell the members of the church, we think we need a new sanctuary. And they finally got it done.
Did you ever meet Reverend Shettles?
No, I didn't know his Shettles.
I know he left here shortly after building the church.
He was before my time. But what happened was my granddad, when Settles left, my granddad kind of took over the building committee, and I have all the canceled church for the materials that church was built from.
Uh-huh.
And I've got them up there in my shop somewhere. I don't know where, but I have them up there in my shop. All the receipts. My granddad kept them. I found them in the attic up in the house he built in 1896. And I just took them out there and put them in my shop to have them kept a long time.
What are some of the challenges the church has faced over the years?
Well, one thing I remember, we used to have on top of the tower where you go in, we had a speaker up there about 15 inches in diameter, and it's about so long, and they played music on it. The pipe organ played music over that speaker system when they wanted to call people to church. And then later we found, my son and I, he maintained it till the ladder that's up there now to climb up to the top was put in there when the church is built, and it got so rotten that my son was afraid to go up there. So we took the speakers off the tower because it was rotten the material in it. Where the wind was blowing it, had loosed it and let water get in there. So we took it off and sealed it where it couldn't get any more water in it. That's the end of the towers. And there's been a lot of talk lately, or some talk, about building a tower to put speakers on. Well, I've told them about this other deal and why we didn't keep them up there. That if they're going to do it, that they ought to put them on a metal tower that wouldn't deteriorate, and set the speakers on it. Then the question comes up, how you going to get to them with them up there 50 feet in the air to maintain them? Or straighten them if the wind blows them around.
50 years from now, how do you want to be remembered? When people talk about Dave Abernathy, what do you want them to remember about you?
Well, I've done a lot of things during my tenure as mayor. I got the 4-lane road to Mount Pleasant. I got the Loop 179 built in '85, and it's named for me. And in 2003, I got the highway department to put a left turn lane in 1520 over there by the middle school, and do all that light, changed out one light to 4 lights, and things that I've done just try to help the city. I helped them get 4 lanes down here on this side, west side of 271, when Brookshire's was getting ready to build their building. I asked them, we had 4 lanes on the east side of 271. I asked the district engineer, how much land do you need to make that 4 lanes? He says, we need 25 feet, we can get by with 20. Well, I had Brookshire's landman up here and his architect, and I told him, I said, I want 25 feet along your south line, about 127 feet long. And they gave it to me, and that's what caused it to be made 4 lanes down there. Then I've had a lot of lights, signal lights added during my time. The last one was down there where 179 enters 271 from the west. And if we didn't have the 4-lane road to Mount Pleasant, I don't know how we'd handle the traffic we have today, because we have 11,000 vehicles travel from here to Mount Pleasant every day, 24 hours.
That's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, you bet. Another thing, they were talking about redoing 271 from Rush Street over to, I guess, Mount Pleasant Street on the north end, and they asked the city and county to buy the right-of-way for it, and they did. And then a few years ago, the district engineer was over here talking to me, wanting to make us 4 lanes through here on Loop 138. I told him, you can't do that. You can't get 4 lanes between these 4 buildings over here. And I said, I showed him the record. I gave him a pack of papers about 1/2 inch thick, showing where the city and where the highway department had requested the city and county to provide the right-of-way for 271 through the city on the east side of the business district. And so he told me, he said, well, we're not going to do anything with Russ Street. I said, well, if you make it 80 feet wide, you're going to be up to the front steps of those houses over there. And he did research in Austin, and he couldn't find anything where they were going to make it 4-lane, except just a notice that they wanted it 4-lane. And I finally convinced him with my records that they weren't any use trying to make it 80 feet when you couldn't get 80 feet between these 2 buildings over here and the 2 across the street. So he told me there won't be anything done on Russ Street. So that took care of that.
Mm-hmm. What words of wisdom do you have for future generations?
Well, I tell you, the problem we're having here at City Hall, people don't stay. We've replaced twice this year already. Our office force in here, 4 of them have quit. They've worked a year or 2 and then they want to quit. And they quit. We have to put in new ones again. We've got a bunch over there now that been there about a month. Oh, I'm going to stay. Well, they tell you that, but after about a year, they want to go somewhere else, do something different. And I think that the modern generation and the future generation, they're going to have to devote more time to doing things for their community than taking care of their personal obligations. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like for them to remember. I've been a city elected official for 57 years, and I've missed 8 council meetings in 57 years. Because I figure you're elected mayor, you're supposed to be at a council meeting every time they meet. And I've been here, I made all council meetings, but 8 in 57 years.
That's pretty good.
And when you have budget preparation, you'll have 4 or 5 a month. But I think the present generation needs to learn that they ought to do and help the public and do what they can to convince the public that they ought to be more public-minded on major projects. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'd like for them to learn.
Any final words before we finish?
No, I don't think so.
Well, thanks for sharing.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome.